You're listening to the Faith Breathed Hope podcast, episode number 194. Today I speak with author, speaker, and podcaster Maeve Jemison on how your highest priority isn't getting all the schoolwork done. Welcome to the Faith Breathed Hope podcast, where we gain inspiration and motivation from others who share their touching stories of renewing hope and discovering purpose in any circumstance. I'm your host, Christina Reisinger, and today we will be encouraged by another tremendously inspirational topic that will embolden you to release fear, begin taking small steps forward, and move into your God-given purpose to live and serve in this life. Join me for today's story. Hello, lovely ladies and gentlemen. Over the next couple of weeks, we are going to have something different and very special for you. I will be speaking with authors, bloggers, YouTubers, entrepreneurs, and all-around go-getters who all have one thing in common: homeschool. So whether you are a homeschool professional, just getting your feet wet in the homeschool world, or considering venturing into a whole new endeavor, these are the talks for you. Join my friends and I as we share the highs and some low moments, encouragement, perseverance, challenges, blessings, reasonings, priorities, how-tos, and yes, even some curriculum suggestions during this homeschool series. Let's listen. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Faith Breathed Hope podcast. I'm your host, Christina Reisinger, and today I am here with my guest, Maeve Jemison. How are you doing today, Maeve?
I'm great, Christina. Thanks for having me. Thanks for giving me a reason to do my hair and makeup with this video.
You always look beautiful, when I've seen you in person and on film as well. So you always look good together. So anyways, we are here to talk about homeschool today. But before we start doing that, would you share with the audience maybe something that maybe not everybody in your circle knows about you, something that you find exciting or interesting, or just that you want to tell people?
Sure. Well, not that exciting, but it is one of those stories like I had to walk to school 3 miles both way in the snow. I used to play basketball as a kid growing up in Oklahoma in the mid 80s. And in this day and age, everyone plays 5-on-5 full court basketball. The teams run up and down the court to both baskets. And I was outside playing basketball with my son the other day, and I got to share with him this story that when we played basketball in Oklahoma, the girls' team, we didn't get to play full court. We actually played 6-on-6. There would be 3 guards on one end with the 3 forwards of the opposing team. The guards, if they got the rebound, they would dribble to half court and we would have to throw it to our guards or our forwards. So we never got to cross that half court line. Isn't that so antiquated? Now, the boys of my age could and did play full court, but it wasn't until I moved to Florida and all the girls did get to play full court. And then it opened up this new adventure of I actually got to shoot the basketball because I was a guard. So isn't that crazy? I just look back like, wow, I'm so old to be able to tell that story.
My goodness. I got to be honest. I am not a sports person. I like sports, especially more of the ones, tennis and running and things like that. So I don't know a lot about basketball, but I appreciate your story. I would like to see that, and I appreciate the meaning behind it. I've grown up in the arts my whole life. So, I mean, while I say dance is a sport, I don't think most people recognize it as a sport.
Oh, no, dancers are definitely athletes.
Oh, I think so, but I think that might be held up for argument in some places. So, but thank you for sharing that. That's really cool. And I can totally see how you would play basketball. So that is really cool. And it's really cool that you have a chance to share that with your children. And
Yeah, and I was telling him that's why I'm missing all these shots because I didn't get to practice my shot until I was like 12 years old. So it was my excuse because he was about to beat me. But I came back, I won.
that's hilarious. That's so funny. And I love the fact that you can like relate to your boys too, because since I'm not in that area of sports, it's very difficult. My son loves soccer, and I tried to play soccer, I believe, 1 year before my husband and I got married. And if I were going to be honest with myself and everybody, it was only to impress him. So when I started playing, I would kick the ball where my leg would come up to my nose or whatever. So like, you kick like a dancer. I'm like, well, of course I kick like a dancer. I am a dancer. So, but apparently it was pretty funny and for everybody to watch. So
Well, you must have had some power behind that kick, though, right? And hey, it worked. He's your husband now, right?
seriously. So
So he must have liked it. Okay.
yeah, yeah. Well, one time I almost broke my nose, but that's for another time. So I'm trying to hit the ball.
The headers, right?
Yeah. So today we're here to talk about homeschool, and we're both homeschool moms, but there's so many different lies about homeschool and so many different misconceptions about how and what you should be doing in as a homeschool parent. How you guiding your children, is it enough? All these questions that come up for parents as they decide to take that journey. And today we are going to talk about one that you write in your book, and we will touch on your book soon, but we're going to talk about the one that you say is a lie, that all homeschoolers have to focus on that schoolwork. That's the most important thing to focus on. And I'll say first, before I turn it over to you, that I am so guilty of this. When we first started homeschooling, I was the 7 hour a day, just like public school type of thing. We have to get this subject done, this subject done. You have to get it thoroughly done. There's no room for anything else. And I was a hot mess. My kids were a hot mess. I was crying, and somebody kind of gave me permission to not do school that way. So can you elaborate on this a little bit? Because I know there's a homeschool mom and dad out there thinking, well, that's the whole purpose of doing school at home, is, making sure our kids get prepared for the things that they need to be prepared for academically. But there are other things that can be more important than focusing on the academics. So I'm going to let you take it away.
Yes, way more important. And when you focus on these things that I'm about to tell you about, the academics will fall into place.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to read you a quote from St. John Chrysostom. He said, "Isn't it absurd to send children out to jobs and to school and to do all you can to prepare them for these, and yet not to bring them up in the chastening and admonition of the Lord? Discipline is needed, not eloquence. Character, not cleverness. Deeds, not words. These gain a man the kingdom." And it really is all about teaching your children to know and love the Lord. And you can use homeschooling as a tool to do that. And it might sound a little backwards at first if you say, well, who cares if your child can read at grade level when there's a risk of losing their heart to evil? Or who cares if your high school age student can diagram a cell, but they don't know the creator of all cells? So it's much more important than anything we find in a textbook, is teaching your children to know the Lord and the foundation. So the foundation of good character and faith.
Mm-hmm.
For what is it profited if for what is a man profited if he shall gain the whole world and lose his own soul? What shall a man give in exchange for his soul? But it is easy because we get in that rut of, what math lesson are we in? What grammar did we get done? Are we behind? Oh no, are we going to finish this textbook? So let me share with you a really egregious example of what I did one time. So It was about 2 p.m. on a school homeschool day for us, and we had had a great day. We had made a salt dough ziggurat. Okay. And if you don't know what a ziggurat is, hashtag homeschool mom knowledge, because I didn't know either until I was a homeschool mom. It's like a temple. It would have been an ancient temple where people worship their gods, a ziggurat. We had created one out of salt dough. We had been to the basketball court. We had edited a seventh grade essay to resemble a seventh grade essay. And I had even gotten some of my puzzle done. My puzzle, I always have a puzzle out that relaxes me. I had even gotten some puzzle pieces connected. So as far as a homeschool day goes, like 10 out of 10 bliss. Okay. And then when my 12-year-old comes to me and she said, Mom, can I read some scriptures for youth group tonight? Um, do you think I was like, oh, honey, that is so great that you want to go read scripture on your own spirit-led volition to discuss amongst your middle school peers tonight? Oh, go ahead, honey. No, I said, did you do your vocab yet? Oh, and you know what? I didn't even realize till hours later, like, oh my gosh, I just missed a chance to really encourage her in what is truly important. And so, let's not do that. Let's not focus so much on what we're doing academically. I mean, why didn't I just tell her, as why don't you go take off that modest 7-inch inseam you got on, put on some Daisy Dukes, and have one of mommy's White Claws while you're at it? I mean, right? So she was on the right path, and it was just a major parenting fail. So that's why I want to make sure that homeschool mamas know this is the most important thing: is let's train them in character, let's make sure that they know the Lord.
Mhm. Yeah, so I mean, you unpacked a lot of things right there. So I just want to look at a couple of them. Uh, the 10 out of 10 checklist. So there are days, and this goes with a lot of things. I'm sure this goes with people when they go to work, when they, are in their own business, if they're entrepreneurs, as they go about sports or arts or whatever. But definitely, if I have seen it in homeschool, you say, okay, today has been a great day. It's a 10 out of 10. A lot of times we talk to our fellow homeschool moms or parents, and they're like, oh, this was great. We did this today and we did this today. And, we are not falling short of that comparison that goes along with the public school system either. Because we think, okay, well, they checked off these boxes. Why am I not able to check off the same boxes? And I just want to say that we have to give ourselves grace when we come up to these days where we don't check 10 out of 10. There are those homeschool fails, but I don't know about you, but there have been days where I said, okay, I got one thing done. Oh, like one thing done that needed to happen today. Then I can move on to tomorrow. And tomorrow might have 20 things that I need to do. But if I can check off, 3 or 4 of those, that's success.
Yes.
So, can you just give a little encouragement to, maybe you've got homeschool parents that have been in this for a little bit and they're still kind of feeling that way, but maybe you have some new homeschool venturers out there that they're saying, hey, I don't know if I can do this because that seems really frustrating. And I don't know that I am strong enough to pursue that.
Yes, I would love to. And there have been many days where we counted on our abacus to 100, and that was it, when my kids were small. So what I want to say to parents to encourage them, for one, homeschooling is not public school at home. Divorce yourself from everything that reminds you of public or government school or private school. Not the huge course loads, not the 7-hour school days, not the homework at night. There is so much time wasted in public school that when you bring your kids home, it does not take 8 hours to homeschool a child. And there's lots of different opinions, and depending on the age, it could be an hour to an hour and a half, maybe 2 or 3 hours. So I want to tell you guys about a study. Um, Dr. Harold McCurdy, back in 1957, he studied the lives of geniuses, lots of geniuses. He took 20 geniuses. Blaise Pascal is one of them. One of the geniuses he studied made contributions to metaphysics, physics, math, mathematics, astronomy. You name it. This guy was a genius. So Harold McCurdy, he wanted to find out what about these geniuses, what do they have in common? And he found three things in this study. He found that the geniuses he studied all had a great amount of love showered on them through their education by a parent or loved one. He found that these were also, the second thing he found was that they were separated or segregated from their peers. The third he found is that they all had a lot of fantastical playtime as kids. So if you don't make that immediate connection, the genius recipe is the homeschooling recipe. You're educating your children in love, away from the influence of peers, and what you're giving them all the fantastical playtime they need. That is the recipe for genius right there. Not how many subjects are we getting in, not how many vocab words are we doing. So let that breathe, okay? Like it can be simple and easy, and you will see your kids flourish in those conditions. And, don't even get me started on playtime, how good playtime and how important playtime is for a child's education. It is so important. And there's so many studies on that, but I won't talk. Let me stop talking before I'm like rambling. So.
No, I love that. I love the fact that you're noting these things, because I know that we have in the past we've done papers on like Henry Ford and I don't even remember, it was Einstein or Edison.
Mhm.
We noticed that when we were reading about them that they all had this. Well, the things that we noticed is a couple of them got into trouble and they couldn't stay in school, but they were very adventuresome. They were kind of outside of the box thinkers, and that idea of them getting in trouble really wasn't them getting in trouble. It was just them thinking differently and needing an outlet to explore. And so
Yes.
we all know what happened with Henry Ford. He did great things, and Walt Disney, and I'm not really sure about Walt Disney's background as far as a childhood, but I know Edison, believe he had kind of a squirrely childhood as well. And, it's really interesting to know, and probably even tell your kids, hey, these people, they did great things. They persevered through all kind of things. So when you're looking at a kid that is different, or the world says is different, the school system says is different, because a lot of times I think that parents bring their kids and homeschool them because of whatever's happening in the public school. Maybe they don't have friends, maybe they're being bullied, maybe they are different kinds of learners, maybe they've been in trouble, that kind of thing. And it's so wonderful to be able to share other people who have succeeded, other people who have persevered, so that they can say to themselves, hey, I'm not a screw up. There's nothing wrong with me. It's just I need to have an outlet. And where you said that fantastical playtime, a lot of times I think about that as little kids. Like my kids are, and your kids, well, most of your kids are older, so you think, well, they shouldn't be playing. And I don't know that you've had this issue, but my thought is, gosh, academics, academics, academics. We have to start preparing so that we're able to go to college. And but then the playtime looks different. I believe I was telling you before we started recording that if I don't call something school and I don't pressure my children to do things and I walk away, I often come up on them using their creativity because of things that we have um, put forth, in earlier years of their life, where different habits and different thought processes and time that we've spent with them. And that goes back to the first one that you mentioned about a great amount of love, you know. So you pour that great amount of love into them as they're growing. Then you walk away and you notice that they're using that playtime, so to speak, to stand outside of their box, use that creativity, those talents that the Lord has given them to think further beyond what they thought they could do. And it is so cool to just, I mean, the younger ages, they're not necessarily proficient in anything, but if you allow them to tinker, so to speak,
Mhm.
that when we read about Henry Ford, he seemed to tinker quite a bit, where he caught fences on fire and he built motors that couldn't get out of the doors and things like that, and so, but it's all of the learning process. It's all about growth. So when the parents are saying, hey, I have to do all these things to check these boxes so that my kid can get into the school or that school, what would your response be to them?
Okay, well, I do want to say, isn't that such a great homeschooling mom moment when you walk into the room and you see your kid engaged and you haven't like made them do it, it's upon their own volition. Oh, it's just such a like beam of light from heaven. Like, yes, thank you, Lord. But what I would say to the parents who think that they have to keep their kid on the conveyor belt to college mentality is that we already have enough kids on that conveyor belt to college. What we want and what companies are looking for are kids who can think outside the box and think creatively and critically. Um, so when we allow our children freedom, and that is in their fantastical playtime, to pursue their passions, they are going to a person who pursues their passions intrinsically and wants to learn about it, is going to be much better off and probably much more knowledgeable and more experienced because they went and found mentors. They went and got internships because they weren't stuck in a cinder block cell with the rest of their other age mates. They're going to be so much ahead of that child who has trudged through the institution all the way through college and earned a degree in the same discipline because they took it upon themselves, and they're doing it because they want to. And we know that as adults, when we want to learn something, how much faster, how good do we get at it when we enjoy what we're learning? We're not going to force feed our kids facts. We're not, if now I do have a college bound child, she wants to go to college. So yes, well, we do have to check off those languages she's going to have to learn. She's going to have to learn the three sciences and the four Englishes. But as a homeschool parent, you still have autonomy over those courses. We can choose what we do for biology. We don't have to go get a secular book that the kids are using in public school and use that. We can be out in the world learning about biology. We can go. This is something we did do, is we took our kids to the Creation Museum and Noah's Ark for a summer vacation. And so we got to see all this amazing scientific proof for God, about she's learning about all this biological. And by the way, we used apologia biology because it's also Christ-centered. But so there might be things we still have to do, but we get to do it on our terms as Christians. And we're going to prepare them, right? We want our kids to be prepared, but we don't have to follow that stringent schedule. We don't have to follow those stringent requirements. There's just so much freedom in homeschooling.
I love the word freedom, because I think we often can forget that that is why we homeschool, because we want that freedom. Uh,
Amen, sister.
when we bring that schooling at home rather, and then homeschooling, and we're trying to do it exactly the way that we think it should be done in school, it takes and it negates that freedom, that ability to say, hey, we are on this path to learn X, Y, and Z, and we understand the end goal. However, it doesn't have to look a certain way to get there. If I just want to take a book and we want to sit around the living room and read out loud, maybe, we're all taking turns reading out loud, even with your older children. So I just want to say that. And you correct me if you think differently, but I believe that when you have your older children sitting around reading with you, it works on so many different levels. It helps you to remember the facts. It helps you to create that relationship and that bond. You are being able to have conversations. And plus, if they're speaking out loud, they're actually working on public speaking. They're working on those things like projection and confidence and clarity and rate, speed, all those kind of things that public speakers need to be able to do. And I know a lot of, I say Christian because we're in that Christian space too. I know a lot of the co-ops really focus on public speaking because that is a huge, because we're also training our kids to communicate. They may be at home working with their siblings or by themselves, but they still have to be able to communicate their thoughts to the world. And having those conversations helps them communicate those thoughts. How do you in your family, because I know, how many kids did you say you have? 6?
Five.
Five. Okay. So how do you, and have you over the past, maybe it's changed throughout the years, but how do you work with your kids on being able to communicate? I'm assuming that they're all in sports.
Okay, yes, they all are in sports except the 6-year-old. We're not yet for him. But okay, when you mentioned reading aloud, I want to reiterate that because there's been many studies on the effects of reading aloud. And what they found is there is absolutely nothing else you can do to help your kids command language, and that is reading, writing, and speaking it, than simply reading aloud to them. Because or let an audiobook play in the car, have an audiobook. My kids, sometimes they want to listen to a book so they can craft or they can paint. And so, because they want to read, but that's the convenience of an audiobook. Because why? Well, you're hearing the words. If you're reading it as a child, you're going to skip over a word you don't know. You might not understand it. But when you're hearing it, you can infer meanings, or you can even, as an adult, you can stop and explain the meanings. So even these great ACT vocab books and the SAT vocab, those are not going to prepare your child as much as reading aloud to them. And so really, you cannot overstate the benefits of the read aloud. And Sarah Mackenzie, I love her. She has the Read Aloud Revival. She calls it teaching from rest. And wow, I concur. It is the most bonding, relaxing thing that you can do with your children is a great read aloud. And those read alouds have bonded us over road trips. There's this book we were reading called Thank You Omu, and it was a picture book, but it has this recipe for Nigerian beef stew in it. And we have made Nigerian beef stew in our home at least every other week for the last 4 or 5. It's my daughter's go-to favorite meal. And it's feeding your family, like literally and figuratively, in so many ways. So the read aloud is so important. And then I'm sorry, did I answer the question? What was the question?
I was asking, well, we were talking about the read aloud, and then, I don't know. It has totally slipped my mind.
Oh, how do I make my kids communicate? Okay, there
That's
we
right.
go.
That was
Woo-hoo.
right. How do you make your kids or how not how do you make your kids, but over the
Oh,
years,
teach
how
them.
has it changed?
Okay.
Teaching them how to communicate, but because homeschoolers are often thought about as being weird and
And that's another lie I do address in my
yeah,
book. Yes.
yeah.
Okay. So, um, when we do family projects, or it's a school project, but it's a family. It's at the end of that unit, we will do presentations. Even from the youngest, they might just hold up this paper that they painted, and they're going to explain it. And the principal or dad is there as well. So just from very early age, we do presentations with the family. Yes, co-ops are great. Now, I've only been in a co-op for 1 year of my homeschooling life, but at that co-op, my kids did presentations in front of a lot of their age mates. Like you said, extracurricular activities. When, in church, whatever we do at church, we're going to read the readings or have my kids read the readings, as a family. So, this is the wonderful thing about homeschooling is just your natural day-to-day parenting life, and you're their educator, so you're gonna cover all the bases. Okay, yes, there will be some holes in their education, and I don't care where they go to school, there's gonna be holes in their education. But life is so full. I just let We were joking the other day, life is going to throw the extracurriculars at you on a daily basis. You're always going to have that extracurricular activity. And let me also say this. Here's the lie about, oh, how will you socialize them? This is the number one thing I get asked. And you could probably agree. How are
Right.
you going to socialize them? That is the biggest misconception, because my kids get to go out into the world and they get to talk to every age, race, socioeconomic demographic, because they are out in the world, as while their counterparts are in sitting in a room. And I even learned recently at the homeschool conference we met at, did you know that homeschoolers have so much freedom, where they can be anywhere they want? But if a public school kid tried to be some places, they would be truant. Homeschool children don't have a work curfew as public school students do. They have to wake up in the morning at a certain time. So, but homeschool students are free. So we are out in the world talking to people, talking to grown-ups at their job. So the most they're the most effective child communicators I have ever seen. Like, when I first saw homeschoolers, I went to a homeschool convention. It was my first year ever. I was blown away that these children could speak to me and look in my eyes. And now, a little bit of background, I was a high school teacher. I taught high school journalism. I had yearbook kids. I had great and smart kids. But these homeschool kids, they knew how to address you, speak professionally. Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. I was blown away, and I was a high school teacher, and I had talked to plenty of children. So you're gonna do that. You're gonna prepare your kids, in a very natural way, and it's fun. It's a family adventure.
Yes. And going back to the reading, I think that really helps them to communicate, especially when they are practicing the reading out loud. We already addressed the fact that it opens up for discussion, but when they're practicing out loud at home, when you are able to critique them and say, hey, not only it matters what we're reading, and we're kind of diving into that a little deeper and having these wide discussions about what we think in this process of what we're reading, but also can you speak a little louder? You use that
Mhm.
projection. Can you speak a little clearer? I can understand you. Can you enunciate? You're able to use
Yes.
things in your home so that when they go out and meet people in the world, that they're able to hold themselves accountable for their talk, for their speech.
Yes, and do the Wonder Woman pose. Do you know
The
that
Wonder Woman pose.
before your presentation? Do the Wonder Woman pose, and you're gonna feel stronger. Yes, we're gonna give our kids those tips, right?
great. Yes, that is so much fun. And then you can like take just, any book and you can use it to teach. Say you took a history book or we read the Bible often. And so we're not just reading about God's word. We love reading about God's word, but it gives us and it affords us the conversations surrounding sometimes math. Isn't that crazy? You talked about
Mhm.
the way that the temple was built and how the measurements and all those kind of things. We talk about our language where we look at how we have who which clauses is one of the big things in our household, ly adverbs. We're able to pick out those things as we are reading. We're able to talk about any type of science that comes up or characters. Even we can delve into the characters and what their personalities are, what their backgrounds are, what they would do in certain situations. So it's a really cool thing that you can do that. Even if you're reading a book, you can talk about the character of whoever you're reading history on. You can talk about their traits, their character traits. You can talk about how they thought and why they did the things that they did. And just bring in other topics and other subjects into that and just really think deeply. We did in your book, one of the things that I was intrigued by is that you referenced Max Lucado, sorry. And you talked about how he said that it was basically an 18-year-old research project.
Mhm.
And I think that a lot of parents probably feel this way, especially maybe even with their first, where I've heard many parents say, oh, they're the guinea pig. Unfortunately, we have to figure out how to do life as they go through each rite of passage. Um, but each child is so different. Each child has different personalities, different needs, different desires. How can we as parents, it's just one of us or two of us, if somebody works outside the home, like my husband works outside the home, so it's usually just, but how can we meet the needs? If we don't say, hey, here's your schoolwork, sit down and just do it. You have to check off all your boxes, all your task lists. How can we pour that love into several children? I know we both have several children, and still be able to spread it out and be enough for them.
Well, so what we want to do as homeschool parents is we want to teach our kids how to learn or
Mhm.
how to teach them and how to teach themselves. And so as we are finding out, I think the Max Lucado poem, it's in The Oak Inside the Acorn, and he says something to the effect of childhood tendencies are usually adult propensities. And so what we're going to do is not we're going to just teach them how to learn. And when we teach them how to learn and let them pursue what they want to learn, then our job gets easier and easier. And so um, we want to do that, but also when we learn, have you ever used unit studies?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yes.
Unit studies are amazing because you can teach across a large age gap. And so a unit study is like, let's say we're learning about dolphins. We're going to learn about, their size, how everything about them, the ocean a little bit, their environment. And we're going to get math from how much do they weigh? How many fish do they eat a day? We're going to get science from did you know they sleep with half their brain? So one eye's open. Isn't that fascinating? I never would have known that when I was a homeschool mom. And then at the end, we take them on we live in Florida, so we could go an hour away and get on a dolphin boat and go see them in swimming. And when we did that, we got to see a baby. The pod that was following our boat had a little baby dolphin in it. So that's what we're going to do is we're going to see their joy of discovery, and it takes off, so that's how we kind of spread it. Now there will be days when we feel super spread thin and we didn't get this or that done, but when we're learning like that as a lifestyle, you're learning so much, you're getting so much more through experiences and, reading than through someone who's just reading something and then going to take a test at the end of the unit and then probably at the end of the 9 weeks and maybe at the end of the school year. So it's just this amazing way to learn. And that was something that I was just dumbfounded by when I started as a homeschool mom. Is they actually have a joy of discovery. They actually want to learn. When you're looking at high schoolers like this, as I'm putting a bored look on my face, they don't care what you're talking to them about.
Right.
When I was teaching high school. But when you see a child that wants to learn about bunny rabbits because they want a pet bunny, oh, I mean, they are going to be schooling you. They're going to be telling you so many facts about bunnies that you're going to be sick of it. You're going to be like painting a smile on, oh, that's great, honey. It's just a fascinating thing to see the way the Lord meant for us to learn and is through this, passionate discovery. And also, you said something about character, and we've mentioned character. So let me also say this. This is a huge part of homeschooling. Charlotte Mason said, the mother who takes pains to endow her children with good habits secures for herself smooth and easy days. Charlotte Mason, for people who don't know, was a British educator. She devoted her life to making sure everyone got she wanted everyone to get a good education. She was like in the 1900s or the 19th century. And back then, everyone didn't get a good education. The rich kids did. And then the poor kids had to go learn a trade. Okay. So she's a hero of the homeschool, right? You've heard of Charlotte Mason, right? So when we teach our kids good habits and good character, then we don't have to be writing them because why? Well, you have to be obedient, honey. You have to you have to be diligent. Now, if they don't know what obedience and diligence is, well, yeah, they're not going to do what you say and they're not going to work hard. So when we can take these character qualities there's so many we can teach them. When we teach them that early, because God gave you to me, honey, and he gave you to me so I can teach you these truths, his laws, then you're laying a groundwork that you're going to have obedient, respectful, sometimes diligent, sometimes they're lazy children, and you will have a lot of more smooth, easy days because of character. Now, there's character curriculums out there, and I would love to tell the one that I have used for years. It's called Character Concepts, and it's just a homespun product. Marilyn Boyer her and her husband wrote it. And what would happen is she would be having trouble. She had 17 kids that she homeschooled, and she would have problems. And she would say, honey, this is what I dealt with the kids today. And her husband, bless his heart, he would go look up the Bible verse that would say, okay, here's the root of this character quality, or here's the root of this sin, and here's the Bible verse that we can combat it with. And so they made this whole curriculum. And I got to teach through character concepts. And I'm sure there's tons of character curriculum out there, but that is what's important, because the minute we let character take a back seat to math worksheets and vocab, that's when it's going to go downhill quick. So we got to keep trimming those buds. We got to do the hard things as parent, as make sure their character is there, because then, like I said, that's when the academics are going to fall into place, because they're going to want to be diligent. They're going to want to, one of the things about character is God sees me. Thou God seest me. Okay. So they're not just doing it because mom's making them. They're doing it because also they want to please God. And then, you know, then we feel better sending them out into the world when they have, that kind of a mentality of choosing right or choosing wrong.
Right.
Mhm.
And sitting down, just reading scripture too helps a lot with that, because you say God tells you to honor your mother and father. He tells you to be
Mhm.
yes, or to be
Mhm.
obedient. If you're not obedient, then there are consequences. And that opens up a whole nother conversation saying, you know what, if we're not obedient to the Lord, then there are consequences. It's not because he makes something happen to us, it's because we chose something that was not good. And he warned us ahead of time. And
Mm,
so there are consequences, not any different than when you're sitting at home with your parents and they tell you to do something and you make a choice not to do it, then there are consequences that follow. So,
hmm. Amen.
uh,
And I love whipping out the Bible verses about fools because I got a couple of teenagers, so I just love throwing some of those, the fool, what the fool does, and that'll kind of get their attention. Oh yeah, I don't want to be a fool, and mama don't want to raise no fool, okay?
well, and then the scripture does tell us that we're supposed to train a child in the way that they should go. But I want
Mhm.
to bring that around again to God's grace and the grace that we need to have on ourselves and other people, other homeschool families, other, our spouse, whoever may be involved, because just because we know these things, so just because we work diligently on these things doesn't mean that there are not going to be times where there is failure in our mind. It may not even be failure. It may be there that God is growing us in something, but we perceive it as failure. And if we're patient and we, allow God to do his work in us and use us to do his work as well, then we see the fruits. uh,
Mhm.
it may take some time. We see the fruits in ourselves, in our own parenting, in our own homeschooling, but we also see the fruits in our children. So if you've ever stopped a second and said, oh my gosh, you take a look at your kids, you just study your kids, you just look at them and observe them, and you say, wow, you know, I go day to day and I'm frustrated about this, or, I think differently about that. But then when I stop and be still, like we're commanded to do, I see the goodness, I see the fruit, of all this, what I may have perceived as being a struggle at some point. Not everybody has the more easy days, but you don't have all of the awful days either all the time. You have to be able to be thankful for what you do have that is great, and listen to God's guidance to move forward for the times that aren't so great.
Yeah.
Um,
And Christina, some citrus trees take 10 years to bear fruit. Okay. So it's a marathon. Homeschooling is a marathon, but you keep at it and we are going to see fruit. And that's what the Lord's word says. So, and it might be years and years, but we'll
yes,
see. Yes.
yeah, it's just that patience and that ability to just continue to seek God's face in whatever situation you're in. The pastor that we listened to this past Sunday, he was speaking something similarly. He talked about how he had a magnolia tree. He decided that they were beautiful. And by the way, that's my favorite tree as well. But he brought one home, I guess, in its infancy, and he continued to nurture it. And then he said this amount of time, and I can't remember if he said months or years or whatever, but he said this amount of time went by and there was no buds, there was no bloom. And I continued to diligently nurture this tree, and there was still no bloom. And he said, this went on and on for quite a while. And then he finally saw this little small bloom that started, having a promise of fruit. And then, of course, it came out and it was this beautiful flower. And, it's just, it takes a while. And I think that is also the training that the Lord gives us when we are given that opportunity to train our children. He's also training us in that training, if that makes any sense. If as we train our children, he is pouring into us. There have been a lot of times where something has happened that I was frustrated about at home. And then that very day, God would reveal to me what the purpose was for that discouragement, I guess, so to speak, where I look at that, whatever I can't even give a real example right now, but I have seen the fact that I was discouraged in something. And then I had a conversation with my kids that night or something. I said, oh, this is why that happened earlier today.
Mhm.
So I could tell
Oh
my
yeah.
kids how to deal with this or that.
Right. And homeschooling is going to make you a better person. Well, it did, a better parent. It did for me because as soon as I started homeschooling, I realized how impatient, unholy, and mean I could be. And that's just during a game of checkers with a 5-year-old. Okay. So So the Lord is going to work on us too, because when we're teaching character, well, of course, we want to do that same character to show our kids. So yes, it's going to help your kids, but it's going to make you it made me a better parent. And I'm still working. It's a daily journey, but it's going to change your whole entire family.
Maeve, I really love having you here on Faith Breathed Hope, and I would love for you to tell the audience about your book. There are many, many other chapters to dive into. So can you tell the name of it and where to find it?
Thank you. The book is called Home is Where the Truth Is, Why You Can and Should Homeschool Your Child. It's broken up into chapters of the lies we believe about homeschooling. And I really believe that every God-fearing parent has thought about homeschooling, because if you're not if you're not watching what's going on in schools, the indoctrination, the sexualization, the fact that a third of kids can't even read at grade level, I mean, it's failing our kids and it's damaging our kids. And I really feel like there's parents out there thinking, could I homeschool? But then I'm going to talk myself out of it because I work or because I don't have the time or whatever it is. And so my book not only debunks those myths using research and data, but it also gives you a bunch of pro tips, stuff that might have taken me a decade to figure out. Well, you can read this book and be like a decade ahead of the game. And I try to imbue it with humor because it's a very serious topic, but we got to laugh or we'll cry, right? And my husband and I have a podcast to discuss the ideas in the book and to discuss how we raise our kids in the faith and and how we fail on a daily basis sometimes. And the podcast is the same name, Home is Where the Truth Is. You can get the book on Amazon and you can listen to the podcast anywhere you listen to podcasts. I would love to have you guys over to listen or grab my book for some homeschool tips. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We're excited. I'm excited. I've read some of it. I'm excited to read the rest of it. So
thank you.
Thank you, Maeve.
Make sure you leave me a 5-star review, okay?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for being on the show. I've enjoyed this conversation, and I know that you guys could reach out if you have any other questions. We'll put the link to find the book in the show notes. And thank you again, Maeve.
Thanks, Christina.
For those of you out there listening, continue to be blessed and bless others, and we will see you next time. The 2024-2025 school year is just around the corner. I want to tell you about a brand new art enrichment program in Jacksonville, Florida for homeschool students ages 5 to 14 called C-Flex Academy. The Arts Enrichment Program at C-Flex Academy provides a creative and fun learning experience as students explore and hone their skills in performing and visual arts. Their core value system is rooted in biblical principles and the belief that through passion, inspiration, hard work, integrity, and perseverance, creative ideas become successful growth opportunities that enhance technique, a love for the arts, and leadership skills. C-Flex Academy strives to inspire your student to develop a great love for dance, theater, music, and visual art that will serve them in other aspects of life. Registration is now open. You can go to the show notes, click the link, and register today. And I want to thank you for joining us on Faith Breathed Hope, where you gain inspiration and motivation to renew hope and discover purpose in any circumstance. Please like and share this podcast and give us a review on iTunes. Be blessed.